Hello, hello, hello. Assalamu alaikum. Jiayanu, Pakhair Agale, Ni Hao, Chunishume, Washmale, Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Ola, Bonjour, Privyet, Kaifa Hal, and a very amazing Khush Ahmadi to everybody who's tuned into PTV1 and are watching World this morning alongside the very pretty Mariam Shahzad and Shahzad Khan. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to rise and shine, wake and bake, get up, and make sure that you are more focused on what you wanted to achieve in your life. Hello, Mariam. How are you today?
Hello, Shazad, and Assalamu alaikum. I hope I'm doing very well, and I hope you guys are doing very well at home and you're ready to start your Wednesday morning with me and Shazad. We are going to talk about a lot of things today. We have a wonderful lineup for you guys, and before we head towards all of that, let's see what we have. What is going around the globe? Let's head towards the top stories.
All right, let's check it out. Top stories coming up. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I still do not feel very right about my throat, but it's
Yeah.
perfectly all right. I'm here for you guys.
Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi has said that the country can only progress if it improves its economy by creating employment opportunities.
Moving on, where we talk about extending an agreement, Pakistan has agreed to extend the agreement of the rail link between Munabao, Kokharpar for another 3 years.
China's deep-sea exploration vessel Ocean Number 6 returned to a harbor in the western Guangdong province after completing a 219-day expedition mainly in the West Pacific.
I guess it's the southern, not the western.
Oh, yeah.
It's all right. Japan's first robot cafe opened its doors to media with a robot replacing the barista to serve coffee to patrons. Well, I think Japan's too late in that because one of the cafes I've been to in Multan actually serves pizza, and that's a robot too as well. Yeah, we win the race.
The world's tallest man, Sultan Qasim, and the shortest woman, Gayoti Amge, visited Egypt's Giza pyramids as part of a campaign which aims to revive the country's struggling tourism industry.
And they look cute too as well.
Tallest and the shortest?
Yeah. No, Jyoti is very cute and a pretty girl. Last but not the least, Met Office has predicted rain, thunderstorm with snowfall over the hills at isolated places in upper parts of the country during next 24 hours. So I think this is the best time to actually plan whether you guys want to go towards the hills or not. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, we're going to go for a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good morning. And don't forget to... All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for everybody who just got tuned into PT while you watching World this morning, alongside the very pretty Mariam Shahzad and Shahzad Khan. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have picked up on a topic which is very important for all of us in our lives, and I think that's the reason why I'm over here, why I'm sitting over here. That's the reason why you are in your offices. And to be more precise, we're going to talk about education and education reforms and technology, and how do we actually need to adopt alongside technology and learn the latest trends within education sector as well. Because quite a lot of times we have had debates where we talk about public schools. It's not a comparison in between private schools or public schools, because it's our fundamental right, and the Constitution of Pakistan actually says that, you know, for kids who actually their ages start from 6 till 15, you know, we are supposed to give them free education. But as a matter of fact, 22.6 million kids are still out of schools. Why? I think these are the reasons, first of all, which we are going to discuss, and then the challenges which people face. And then we're going to talk about girls' education too, because I think that's more of a problem over here within Pakistan, that parents, if they can afford to send one kid or two kids, they'll prefer their sons. But as a matter of fact, I think it's everybody's right, and we need to raise our voice for that as well. So on my right-hand side, to talk about all of these things and the challenges which we face in everyday routine, we have been joined by somebody who's in education. Well, there are other hats to her too as well, but she's none other than Ms. Hira Zainab. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam and good morning.
Thank you very
Good
much.
to be
Good
back.
morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And alongside Ms. Hira Zainab, we have been joined by Executive Director, Pakistan Alliance for Girls Education. She's none other than Mrs. Fajr Rabia Pasha. Hello, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm good. How are you?
Walaikum assalam.
Long
Thank you
time.
very much. Is your husband happy now?
Yes.
All right. So we are taking your name. All right. Last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, Founder Knowledge Platform. We have been joined by Mahmood. Well, that's a tongue twister name, by the way. This is something which I have been saying quite a lot from yesterday, but
Yeah.
it's Mahmood Mahmood. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Very
Thank you
nice
very
to-
much for joining us. How do you pronounce your name?
It's Mehboob Mahmood, but it is a tongue twister.
It
You
is.
can imagine going in school in Pakistan and having the name Mehboob with so many Indian film songs. Mehboob wasn't easy either.
Well, it's perfectly all right, but let's get the conversation
It's like
started.
MM.
Please.
MM is probably.
Yeah, MM is fine too, but Mr. Mehboob is fine too. All right, so let's get the conversation started, and we'll get started from a point where 22.6 million kids are still out of school. What do you think are the reasons behind that?
And let's add this question, like the approx is 26 million children are out of school, and the sad part is that 60% of the children, they don't know what they're actually doing. Their concepts, they don't have the concepts of knowing what they're doing. So actually my question is, his question and then my link is, what is the government doing to, you know, go about this whole dilemma?
Okay. So when we talk about education in Pakistan, there are two major challenges. One, as what Shehzad was mentioning, is the access to education. 22.6 million kids are out of school and they do not have access to basic education facilities.
Right.
Despite that, we have an Article 25A saying every child has a right to get educated.
True.
The reasons for that are, start with affordability, cost of sending kid to, school. Girls have a problem of transport, problem with infrastructure with the school. So the reasons are great, but there's still lots which is being done
Right.
from a long time to improve enrollment, to increase enrollment. And we have seen that access has improved over the years. 2 years ago, it was 25 million kids. Now it's 22.6 million kids. So it has improved over time. So I feel that we are headed in the right direction. But the more complicated problem is that even the kids who are going to schools are not learning.
Exactly that.
And that's the quality of education dilemma.
Yes.
We will definitely come back to that. Let's not jump over. But let's move on to Mrs. Fajr over here. Since you are the Executive Director, Pakistan Alliance for Girls Education, how is this situation for girls' education within Pakistan? And would you mind sharing any figures about that too as well?
Yep. Out of the children who are out of school
Yeah.
figure, 52% are girls. So there are a higher number of girls who are out of education. Or there's two things that we need to remember. There are figures are much higher for girls who are out of education past primary education, because what happens, there are two major reasons for that. 81% of government schools in Pakistan are primary schools.
Yeah.
So we have less secondary schools and girls secondary school particularly. So what happens is, if a girl, there are parents, you have the cultural challenges and religious challenges as well, where there is school exists, but the parents would not be sending their girls to school because they think primary is enough and they've learned to read and write and this is enough for them. They can stay home and help their mothers at home. But at the same time, where parents are willing to send the girls to school, then the distance between school and home is much further than the primary schools, which it's not, what we need to understand is that when we talk about out of school children, there is not one issue that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with multiple challenges, particularly when we talk about girls' education, because you're talking about lack of facilities within the schools. For example, there are no toilets. So you cannot expect a girl, or even a boy
Yeah.
to be attending school if there are no toilets. But I think there's a lot of work going on, and because after the 18th Amendment, this is a very important point. Though 25A says that everybody has access to free education, free and quality education.
Yeah.
I may add to that because that's part of the Constitution.
That's how education needs to be, by the way.
Absolutely. But after the 18th Amendment, education is a provincial subject as well.
Yeah.
And which means that every province, Sindh, Balochistan, KPK, Punjab, everybody is responsible for what happens in the country, which is good in a way and sometimes is more troublemaking as well.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to pick up. Obviously, there are challenges, and that's why we are here. That's why we've gathered over here. But as a matter of fact, if you're going to school early in the morning, and if if there are no washrooms, I think that's not literally an excuse to not go to school. I mean, people or
Yeah.
parents can actually handle that situation. That's not a problem. Or you can skip days as well. As a matter of fact, if you do not feel fine. But Mehboob Saab, since you are the founder of Knowledge Platform, first of all, let us know about Knowledge Platform. What is Knowledge Platform? And then I'll continue with what challenges do you see are prevalent within our education sector?
Well, we provide online and blended learning education solutions. So we put computers in classrooms, provide content, provide teacher support, and track how every kid is doing.
Yeah.
In terms of picking up on the question of challenges, one of the interesting things we found is that you have infrastructure problems, you've got cultural disposition to not let girls go in schools and all, but one important factor is the motivation of children themselves. If you look at the 22.6 or 25 million kids who are out of school, 1/3 are in primary and 2/3 are in secondary.
Okay.
That means we're doing a better job of getting kids into primary, but not doing a very good job of keeping them in, doing a lousy job of keeping them in.
Okay.
Now, one factor for this is that the child himself or herself is not so motivated. Usually a child who's motivated, unless they're from an extremely depressed or underprivileged background, somehow people can scrape together and get them past metric.
All right.
So a big factor is that education system doesn't inspire, and it doesn't challenge the kids. It doesn't give them a future for a pathway to a future that they see that education will be useful.
All right, but I think for that, what we need to do is that we actually need to change the definition of literacy then. Because we over here in Pakistan say that if you can just, do your own signature, I think that's what literacy over here, or read and write. So that's why that we have got a bigger number in primary schools and not a larger number in secondary schools. And that might probably be because of the fact that we haven't actually focused on having more secondary schools too as well. Because wherever we go, there are primary schools. Do you agree to that we need to change the definition of literacy?
Okay, so there are two parts to your question.
Yeah.
One is primary versus secondary.
Yeah.
Why is there a difference? And the second is definition of literacy. You see, how it all began is that initially the focus was just on access, increasing enrollment, and that's it. And this remained to be the case till 2015.
Okay.
Before that, there were MDGs, which were UN's goal, and they were focusing on just increasing enrollments. In 2015, SDGs came into being, which for the first time recognized quality of education as the main criteria for the education sector. And then the focus, automatically shifted to the, secondary.
I'm sorry that I'll have to stop you over here, ladies and gentlemen. My co-host over here actually needs to cough as well. So we're going to go for a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we're going to talk about this point where we say that, we have been saying it, we have been reinforcing it within our SDGs to quality education. But is it literally happening? And are we literally practicing that too as well? I think that's something which we need to ask. Let's go for a short break. Don't go anywhere. Good morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. For everybody who just got tuned into PTY, you watching World this morning, and you guys already know the name of your host. And alongside us, we have been actually joined by Ms. Hira Zainab, who she's an educationist. Then we have been joined by Mrs. Fajr Rabia Pasha, and then we have been joined by Mehboob Mahmood. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have picked up on a topic which is very vital, which is very pivotal, which is very important. We're talking about education and reforms within education, and alongside reforms, we are even talking about, well, before when we went towards the break, we were asking about whether how to actually come about all of these things or all of those problems which are prevalent. So let's continue with the conversation, Ms. Hira. You were saying something.
Yeah, so I was saying that so the focus on towards quality of education internationally and nationally changed, started getting attention in 2015 when SDGs came into being. And that's when, for the first time, even governments started taking it as a problem,
Right.
and they started realizing that only 25% of the kids who start their journey at grade 9 reach grade 10. So,
The kids who
75
start their journey at
grade
grade
one,
9.
grade 1,
Okay, grade 1.
only 25% reach at till grade 10. So 75% kids drop out.
Yeah.
And then they started to
Right.
ask questions. So one is, as what Fajr was saying, that there are less secondary schools. The second is what Mehboob was saying, the child is not motivated to go. Obviously, in the case of girls, generally parents do not allow them to go because, male student, they consider, it's a phenomenon in our society that
They're
males
not going
are,
to go
yeah.
have a job or
Right.
something of that. So they're just
Also,
going to get married. So what's the point?
Yeah, males are the bread earners, so
Yeah.
why do girls need to, go and get educated? But the second problem, which you were saying, is that that what is literacy, and is the definition of literacy really in compliant with the quality of education
Right.
debate? And I think we all know the answer, that it's not, because just writing a name is not enough, and that is why. Even just leave the writing name out of the picture.
Yeah.
Even we are getting degrees, we are getting out of school, we are getting out of universities, and we are not getting jobs. You were talking
Right.
about Prime Minister saying, employability is very important for this. We have to increase opportunities for employability. So we are, continuing to get degrees but not getting jobs, and this all begins to,
Because you
Right.
get a degree by after paying quite a lot of money, and when you get a job, they pay you the money. So I think it's simple too as well. And
There is a thing called theory of change.
Yeah.
Right.
What they say is that if you want to bring any change, you have to record the sequence of events which will bring that change.
all right.
Often, when we talk about, when you talk about, why do we want to promote education in Pakistan or in any country?
Right.
To improve economic growth. Okay, so if you want to improve economic growth, then what will happen? How will economic growth will improve? When people will get jobs. And then you begin to link it to what you are doing about it, and all you are doing is bringing kids to school. And how will that relate to the change you want to bring? So the missing, elements, they need to be considered when
So I
you are
think one of
trying to
those
work
missing
about it.
element is definitely quality of education, ladies and gentlemen. Let's
It
ask
is.
Mrs. Fajr over here, what is quality education? Because we've all been going to school. I think we still study the same curriculum too, and I think the process is pretty much the same. So is that quality education?
No, I think, I always compare with the fact that if you look into our bureaucracy, for example, you'll find, bureaucrats who have actually come from schools where they've studied under a tree.
Right.
Okay, so this is my where I agree with having technology, for example, because it's a need of the time. We need to be preparing children not to be productive in 5 years' time, but where the world is going to be in 20 years' time.
Yeah.
Because it's a globalized community and economy, and we're heading that way, and it's very important aspect that we need to remember while we're talking about the quality and what are we teaching. But the quality comes from the teachers, the passion of the teacher, and the commitment of teachers towards the student. That's where I think where we're lacking. So yes, we can talk about we do need the teachers training, we do need all of that.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, basically we're missing that passion where teachers were
teachers
like
were
really
dedicated?
because the thing is, you see, there's nothing wrong with our books. If you look at it, you know, if you look at the curriculum, basically the books are fine. But what's happening in the classroom?
But it's not
Teachers are
applied education. See,
Yes,
see, that's what
of
my
course.
point is. It's
Yes,
like,
so
you know,
the teachers are not committed enough to make that effort, because even if you lack resources, let's just say, because, you know, we are going through an education crisis in Pakistan. We're talking about such a huge number of children who are out of education, where we have the second largest number of children out of
Right.
school in the world, right? So that's a scary figure. And then you're talking about that when a child finishes primary, there's only one child out of 5 who can read and write, right? So that's a scary figure. Then we're talking about girls' education and secondary education. We know that only 1 out of 10 girls are actually completing secondary education. So these are the girls who actually enroll for secondary education, right? So we have a lot of scary figures which basically, you know, should really wake us up and really have a lot of you know.
So your point is basically that the dedication is lacking
of
from
teachers,
both ends.
I think, you know, where even if the facilities are missing, right, if the teachers are committed, because then we have so much access to information now throughout Pakistan, and I really praise Ministry of Information Technology for that we have access to internet throughout Pakistan,
Exactly.
right? And high speed internet, we're not talking slow speed internet. That means then everybody in Pakistan, you know, the usage of smartphones, for example, has increased dramatically. If you look at the stats, every year the figures are increasing, you know, in the crazy numbers really. And that's, you go to FATA, you go to Balochistan, whichever part of the Pakistan you go to, no matter how rural or, you know, it's there. So teachers do have access to that information. Yes, we do need to train teachers. I don't disagree with that. But while that is not happening, or while the government is planning and other stakeholders are planning and trying to get to, you know, provide that teachers training programs, etc., I think the teachers have a responsibility, because it's the teacher and student relationship that matters for a student. As for, you know, if I'm a student, all that matters to me is the teacher. I don't know the government. I don't care about the head
What's
teacher.
going on, what's not, yes.
You know, it's the teacher's commitment, and I think the teachers need to really step up in this case.
All right, but since you even mentioned about internet being accessible to as well all across Pakistan, so I think I'll move on to Mehboob Sahab over here before we move on towards a small documentary which I want to share with our viewers. And that is, what kind of footprint do we get on our digital arenas too as well, where people actually come by their own selves because they want to learn, you know, they can log on to any other website. Do we have any figures about that people actually want to learn?
Well, actually, now, as you know, the mobile has spread quite considerably, to the extent that perhaps around 80% of the population have some kind of mobile access, if not with a phone themselves in their family and so on. The data access level is about 18 to 20%. So it's one of the lower ones in Asia, but that's also growing quite fast. That means that over the next 5-6 years, what we're going to see is a lot of people who actually have internet access rather than just mobile access. So this will change. There are a few initial sites that have come up, but more importantly, we also need to embed this in the school process, so that we need to not only just have sites available for a proactive teacher or student to go and visit, but schools to embrace technology-driven education. And I think if we do that, we can transform education in Pakistan in the next 5 years or so.
I would like to say 2 things. One, on your question, is there any data available that students really want to learn online or not? You know, 3 years ago, at our organization Knowledge Platform, we started an initiative called Learn Smart Pakistan, with the same thing, that promoting online learning in Pakistan. And everyone said, are you crazy? Will 9th and 10th grade students bother to use internet for studying when they have so much other things to do? And we thought, let's just give it a try. In 2014, we just had 195 students. In 2015, we had 1,500 students from 300 schools. In 2016, we had 11,000 students and teachers from 3,000 schools in 290 cities. Right now, we have crossed 19,000 students and teachers across Pakistan. And that shows the immense potential, and the fact that students want to be exposed to
Right.
such, different opportunities. It's just
Exact-
that we are not
Right.
giving enough of them.
Exactly, and definitely, if you're moving in the right direction, if the figure will be beyond your measure too as well, and that's where it perfectly links up with my documentary, which I wanted to share with all those people who are out there. It's with the name of Beyond Measure. Let's go ahead. Let's take a listen. You have to listen to it very carefully because it is very important. Let's go ahead. Good morning.
20, 30 kids in a room and expect them all to learn the same material at the same pace with the same structure. Everybody has their own learning style. Everybody has their own pace.
Even though our achievement data has looked pretty good over the last few years, our students are struggling in college, so we're losing kids. We begin to think about what is it that we're missing?
In traditional education, we have always been having a one-way conversation. There has to be a better way to get students engaged in this process.
We have this small cohort of people who do extraordinarily well and everybody else drifts away, and that is not a healthy society.
The strategy of successive governments has been to say, narrow the curriculum, standardize everything, and have more testing. Systemically, it's not working.
Education has become all about filling in a bubble rather than unlocking human potential.
I'm just not learning, I'm just memorizing, and it's really scary.
We need to think completely differently about the fundamental basis of education, why we're doing it, and what it should look like.
We have examples of schools that have redesigned themselves.
We went on this quest to rethink school, to try to see it differently than we've ever seen it before.
We're the culmination of people being frustrated and the desire of a community to get together and say, we want something different.
What if we looked at all of the studies on curiosity and engagement? What if kids directed their own learning?
The academics is set up in a way that each student is allowed to speak to the teacher and say, hey, I really want to learn more about this.
You have math, physics, English. All your classes will tie into one big project.
Hands-on makes the learning environment so much better.
You walk away from visiting this high school and you think, why can't we do this?
Because it is a large institution, there's certain policies that you have to overcome anytime you do something new.
People are really resistant to change.
It's not the same way we've always done it.
Innovations are not protected.
Now we're at the hard part.
We're taking a risk. The greater risk is that we do nothing.
The change comes from the bottom up, not from the top down.
It's hard, but it is so worth it. We're seeing our students do things we've never seen them do before.
We are going to be adults soon.
His opportunity to do this changed his high school life.
I just needed the right education and the right environment to succeed.
These strategically subversive heroes and heroines, those people are going to remake the system.
An education system that fails to tap in to the genius that's resident in all of our children and the creative ambitions of our teachers will simply fail to meet the challenges they and we all collectively face.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so that was a small clip indeed, but it delivers the message, and the message is that we actually need to change the education system where we need to tap onto the human potential. We are not actually going to tell them that, okay, be in the bubble, just read all of these things, fill in a form, and that's it, you move on to the next grade.
Yes.
So for all of those capacities and capabilities which we might have naturally, I think what we need to do is that we need to tap on those areas.
Yes, so the documentary is basically about that concept building. It's not all about, what you're feeding into your head. It's more about your learning through a lot of different means. You did learn a lot, Shahzad. You talk a lot, so you've learned a lot.
Thank you very much for that.
No, thank you so very much for covering for me. I was not feeling well. So anyways, I have so many questions lined up for all these great guests sitting with us today. So first of all, I will start with Hira. So Hira, tell me,
but just remember that we are about to end the show in next 7 minutes.
Yes, but that's why I'm going to be really quick. So what factors contribute to the quality of education? And second, there are two questions. That how is technology pivotal in shaping education?
Okay, take care. I'll try to be quick. When you talk about quality of education, one is the perception, one is the actual practice, and third is how to measure it. Yeah. The perception we have, and when I'm saying we, I'm saying about students and teachers and all, is that if you get good scores, then that's the good quality of education. whereas it contradicts from the international way of determining quality of education, which is actually three things. One is student learning outcomes, and they are not based on the scores, they are based on the actual learning levels. Second is the teaching quality, and there are different indicators to measure that. And third is the student engagement, how active they are in the classrooms. Are they just listening? Are they just passive? Or are they actively contributing to the discussions in classrooms? And we have to consider all these things while designing anything to improve quality of education.
But that's not even closer to what happens in public schools.
Exactly. But you see, now it's changing. I am working with all female public schools in Pakistan right now with Federal Directorate of Education. So it's changing now. And that's a good sign, because that means that now the awareness that something needs to be done has started to get in and penetrate in different stakeholders.
Right.
The second question was, how can technology play a role in improving quality of education? First, we have to understand, what does technology in education really mean? There's a hot term, one of those cool terms which are very common. That's one of those terms is edtech. So you open anything on Google and it talks about edtech interventions. And and I have asked these questions to so many people, from policymakers to students to principals to owners. What does technology in education mean to you? And all they say is that, it means providing laptops, tablets. And I say, what does come to your mind? Well, when you think about technology in education, all they talk about is smart boards, multimedia, internet and all that. And this is the biggest misunderstanding we have when we talk about technology in education. Because with this misunderstanding, we set up IT labs in schools, we provide them smart boards, and then they catch dust. Then they don't get used. Why?
Because they don't know how to use it.
Yes, that's one component. So, they lack the training to use it. Third is that why will you use them? What content will what is it that you're going to teach with them?
Which we don't get in our books.
And, schools are expected to, look up resources online, which is the strongest, I strictly disagree with that, because our teachers are so much overburdened that if you expect them to see 20 videos online and then pick one for their classrooms, then you can continue expecting and it will never be used.
But I think how I can relate with EdTech is, or technology in education is having better research labs, having facilities, having scientists to come in and telling you that okay, this is some experiment which we are going to do using these technologies, so that we evolve as a nation, and then we come towards a point where we are actually adding on to the GDP of the country too, by inventions, by new things which we bring in. But since we are very short of time now and we quickly have to get done with this, so very quickly let's talk about solutions, because we've got last 5 minutes. How do you think that we can convince all of those parents? Because girls not going to schools is actually not the government's fault. It's the parents' fault majority of the time, that they really do not appreciate, because other than that, Punjab government came up with a point where teachers actually go door to door too, and then there are these buses which have been introduced if they cannot travel.
And all that has helped, by the way. I mean, all the interventions, because whichever province you pick up, everybody's trying their own models and practices, and they're trying to bring innovation in to see how they can improve things, and that's a good sign. And I think when you're in crisis, what I believe is that gives you the perfect opportunity to fix things properly. I think we were at a point where we can look at, there are a lot of countries who have already gone through education reforms. We are in a need of education reforms with very sort of uniformity, because we're also facing a lot of social issues, which, I mean, I don't want to go into it right now because that's another long subject. So there's a lot of things that we need to address, and creating not creating children, probably that's the wrong word, but creating analytical skills within the children at foundation level is the most important thing. And that brings us to the point that, where we are, the teachers are constantly expecting children to just memorize everything. So they're not understanding anything. And the third thing, like I said before, that we need to be focusing on what's going to happen, where the world is going to be in 20 years' time. That is, if we want Pakistan to be
Very nice.
competing with the world. If we want to keep on going at the same pace as we are at the moment, then we're always going to be behind. And we need to take that jump 10 years ahead. That's what I believe. So you talk about technology, talk about content. There's a lot of things, and it's a long debate. But the planning needs to be there. The strategic planning is where we need to really focus on.
A very important point which just came across my head, and that is, Mehboob sir, probably you can even share your experience about that, and that is that when we say that the quality needs to be uplifted, or we need to talk about changes which are positive in terms, is it because of the fact that we are comparing public with private? Because public is a different thing and then private is a different thing. So when we talk about quality of education, what is the epitome for that?
That's a good question. Now, I'll just broaden it slightly and say that what is the one thing that we could do, because we've talked about technology, we've talked about improving teachers, putting more resources in and so on. I believe the one thing, if we were to focus on, is to make education a proper industry. What is really exciting about education in Pakistan, partly because the government has not delivered up to its constitutional obligation, that we now have 37% of our kids being educated in the private sector. This is now a $1 billion to $3 billion industry in our country. They run 100,000 schools, and there are about 40 to 50,000, what I would say, intellectual entrepreneurs, sons of tailors, sons of shopkeepers who set up schools because of their passion for learning, and they've done something. Now, they're not really great quality in many cases, but they've done something and they've put a school together. If we start giving inputs into this sector, treat it as an industry, give them some tax breaks, give them some financing, and give them quality interventions like what we are trying to do at Knowledge Platform through technology and so on, we can really transform education, because we already have a massive industry. So all we have to do is strengthen and support that industry. Today, we are very strong in giving incubators to basically middle class and upper middle class kids for developing technology and so on. But let's incubate this industry. This is not this industry is not run mostly by rich kids or a privileged kid. It's run by common people. But they've created an amazing industry. Let's strengthen it.
We have a program just for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. We're very sorry that we've actually run out of time. We're definitely going to have you over again as well. But before wrapping it up, I think the only thing which I wanted to say was that when the elite of the country, when the politicians of the country, when for all those people who rule the country, if their kids are actually going to start going to the public schools, I think we are going to win the trust of all of those people who look forward to us as leaders or as speakers or as anchors, and that's when we're going to set an example that public schools are actually just equivalent to private schools too as well. And once we're going to, because all of those buses are there, all of those things are there, teacher training programs are going on, I think the only thing which is missing is the level of trust.
Let's agree to disagree. Not just the politicians' sons or daughters have to go to the school. I think we need to educate the teachers in the public sector, and because I think the private schools teachers are quite educated as compared to the public teachers. So we need to educate
Even though they came from a public school, but it's perfectly all right, they can still work at a private school. That's a different debate. We'll talk about that, but that's not what my point was. My point over here was that all of those people who lead the country, who shape up our future, actually need to send their kids. When they start sending in their kids, I think automatically the attention will be diverted to the quality of the education. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, do not forget to write to us on our Facebook fan page, which is with the name of
World This Morning.
On Twitter,
World This Morning without a G.
Or Daily Motion and YouTube,
World This Morning.
And the fabulous repeat is going to be at
11:05 p.m.
Till the next time, ladies and gentlemen, 1, 2, 3.
Good morning.